All right. Today we are live here with Nesreen Ahmed, who is a certified life coach, grief coach, and divorce coach with HarborLightCoaching.com. And today we're going to be talking about grief as it relates to divorce, because as I'm sure you will let us know, Nesreen, that divorce is a grief. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing pretty well, thank you. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to bring you on because I wanted to talk about your what you do as a business and how you help people get through the grief of divorce. And I know you have some coaching that we'll talk about later as well on that. But can you further introduce yourself? Maybe tell us about how you got into this, and then I'm going to hit you with some questions.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, hello everyone. I have been coaching for about 8 years, going on 9 years, and absolutely love it. It was not intentional going into grief, loss, and major changes in life, right? But I basically got into it after my own grief. So my sister passed away suddenly at the age of 37. She was my
Mm,
older sister. And it's going almost on 10 years. Almost on 10 years, she passed away. But it was very sudden loss and really turned my whole world upside down. I was very, very clear. I didn't want to be living in the place I was living in. I didn't want to continue in the career I was in. And through, a lot of different, a lot of different trial and error, was really able to get the support that I needed to work through that grief, and then also to figure out that this is what I want to be doing. I really want to be supporting people when we feel like we're going through the hardest times, when we feel like we have no one else who knows how to listen and understand and provide the resources and the tools that we need to really be able to cope with the huge, life altering things that we're dealing with. So there are a lot of different things that can cause grief in life. Certainly divorce is among the top of those experiences. And I have worked with a lot of people who are trying to figure out how to process this huge change, how to co-parent and do it well, how to kind of restart and figure out who they are now that they're not married and in that relationship. And yeah, it's a real honor to be able to work with people through that.
I was reading on your website, one of your challenges when you're going through your grief was finding a counselor that was actually effective. And that's what kind of motivated you to look into this and get certified.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I started out in therapy because that's what everyone said I should do. And I'd been in therapy before. So I was like, okay, I'll just go to see a therapist. But unfortunately, she had no real training. A lot of therapists don't actually have training in grief other than sort of like a very general kind of course, if you will, or a bit of information. And so I found that she's just sort of wanted to talk about um, my life in general without really going into my grief very
Hmm.
deeply. And for me, that was exactly the opposite of what I needed. Like I could figure out life, but I couldn't figure out how to deal with this incredible grief. And so I started going to support groups after that, and that was helpful. But it was there's a point in the support group where the counselor said, somebody asked her, how long is too long to be in this group? How long before we think, maybe there's something more going on where we should be worried about ourselves, etc. And the counselor said, if you've been here longer than 2 years, then you really need to start thinking about getting other kinds of support. And
Hmm.
that freaked me out because I'd only been there maybe a couple months. And I was like, you want me to come in every other
Two
week
years.
for the next two
Yeah.
years to do collages and to like talk about how sad I am and to not be able to move forward in some meaningful way? No way, no way. I can't do that, right? I couldn't imagine that. And what I didn't know at the time was there's a lot of other factors, right? And a lot of other things that I could be taking into account. But at that point, I was like, I got to find something else. And I'd already started in a coach training program. It was a year-long program to become a life or executive coach. And in that program, somebody told me that she just met a grief coach. And so that's when I was like, okay, I'm curious about this. What does it mean? And coaching is intended to be more proactive than things like therapy or counseling. And so I found it to be exactly what I wanted because it helped me feel like I had something to do from week to week so that I could move forward and I could start to process things in a different way. And yeah, I mean, for me, it was the unexpected gift that I never thought that would actually help me. I never thought that I would ever be able to talk about my sister without crying, without feeling this immense amount of guilt and regret. And I'm very happy to say that working with that coach helped me really process so much, so that I could transform not only how I was feeling, but I could transform how I felt about my relationship with my sister so that it was easier to talk about her and it was easier to remember the good times. And it gave me more of a balance, in how I was feeling.
You were saying that you wanted to drill down, if I understood you correctly, like on your specific grief as opposed to talk about the rest of your life, as from what I understand. Is with your coaching like related to this say divorce specifically? Is that what that area of your counseling or therapy can just focus directly right down on that issue of grief, that say divorce or just separation in this example? And can you give me kind of some common, you mentioned a few, but some common examples of what people might be experiencing during that process related to divorce?
Absolutely. Yeah. So my coaching is definitely geared towards whatever the client wants to talk about that week. But a lot of people, when they're dealing with grief, find that the therapist or the counselor doesn't necessarily want to stay focused on the grief. They might ask for a lot of history and sort of past experiences, and that's very common. It's not a bad thing, but I found personally that wasn't what I needed, because again, I had been in therapy before. What I needed was help in this particular situation with this immense amount of grief that I was feeling, and she just couldn't provide that. You know what I mean? And so I really tried to. I do have a lot of clients who want to come in and they want to talk about the sort of ramifications of the divorce, right? They feel like, okay, I lost a lot of my friends that were, friends with us as a couple. I don't know how to create a social life anymore. I don't have the kind of support that I wanted. My family's not, really supporting me in the way that I'd hoped. I'm having trouble with my soon-to-be ex in terms of negotiating the things that, and trying to come to some kind of an agreement. Again, co-parenting, where to live. Now I can't, now I have to move, or I can't move, so there's all these sort of different things that come up. And I really try to offer what I can and to support them with whatever's most pressing in that moment. But usually it is very much focused on the grief, on the sort of like, how do I deal with this, the uncomfortable or difficult situation? How do I deal with the emotions that are coming up for me? Some people feel immense amounts of grief or guilt, because they're the ones that are initiating the divorce, right? Some people feel a lot of guilt around their kids. They don't know how to deal with it. They don't want their kids to be negatively impacted, or they want to limit how much of a negative impact is there. A lot of people are trying to just sort of navigate the legal system, and they have concerns about, well, he agreed to this, but now the lawyer is saying they changed their mind, and now what do we do, and how do I approach it? My attorney is a bulldog and she wants to do this, but I don't know if that's a good idea, and so while I can only offer, a listening ear, I'm not trained in anything to support them legally. These are some of the things that people come and talk about. And then also just the emotions of it. It's like, I lost that person that was like my other half, and now the roles or the responsibilities I have are so much different. Like, this person used to take care of the finances, now I have to. Or we, split a lot of the finances. I can't do that anymore. What do I do? How do I support myself? How do I support my children? I have to take out the trash. I have to, get the car or whatever. I have to do all the things in the house. All these different responsibilities are suddenly, that we're sort of divided and potentially, not fully evenly, but at least somewhat, are now on the, one person's shoulders. And so it is a big change for them.
So you handle quite a few. I was surprised to hear obviously all these things are true issues that people have to deal with when they're going through divorce, and they can all be issues. So is there kind of some crossover between the grief coaching and the divorce coaching, or are they kind of all in one?
For me, it's really all in one. This is just sort of the years of experience I've had working with people through divorce. Some people really want to talk mostly about the emotional ramifications and how to deal with the grief and how to process sort of internally. But most people I talk to are sort of looking at the big picture of like, this is so life altering that I can't separate the emotion from all of the different realities that I have to negotiate. And I don't know how to negotiate all of these things while I'm also going through all of this emotional turmoil, right? And so our coaching becomes that safe space of working through a lot of it, talking about it, figuring out the best option for them. Like, I'm never there to tell them, this is what you should do. This is how you fix the situation. Talk to them, say this, do that. Like, that's never my role. My job is to help them learn how to come up with their own answers and solutions, and then to trust that, right? Because it may not always go the way they want to, but that doesn't mean it was a bad solution or a bad idea. It just means it didn't go the way we want it to, right? Which is life. So it really is about helping them learn how to navigate whatever circumstance they're in, and then also to trust themselves that they can handle whatever else comes up.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. People are going through they're going through a divorce or separation. They're trying to make these legal decisions, but they are in the background, like you said, they can't separate the emotional charge from these decisions, and maybe that's confusing them, or maybe that's making them make irrational decisions. So, do you have any examples of where maybe you've helped someone where they were struggling in a divorce or separation, and how through your therapy, they're able to, for lack of a better word, calm them down or get them to a place emotionally where they could then be able to better handle and make better decisions in a divorce?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a client a while back. She initiated a divorce with her husband. They've been together for a while, at least I want to say 8 to 10 years, but they had just had a child. So their child was less than a year old. And she kind of falls into that example of, like, they had come to some agreements initially about co-parenting and how often he would see her, and custody and all that. And then when they got in the room to sign on everything, he changed his mind. He wants to go in front of a judge. Nothing is okay. I didn't agree to any of this. And so she was like, okay, I'm done. Like, if he's going to, like, switch on a dime like that and lie, then I'm also, going to kind of take away all the different things that I had agreed to. And I don't want to, like, give him any custody, and I don't trust him, and this and that. And, we were able to talk about it and have her see that she had a very strong reaction, but the response that would actually ultimately serve her was very different. Right. So even though she wanted to shut everything down and basically file or fight for sole custody, she realized after a few sessions that probably wasn't the best option, and that wasn't fair for her daughter, because she realized she wants her daughter to have a relationship with her father, and so we were able to work through some of that and come to a more reasonable response. And, there were some ups and downs in that as well, but she felt more confident making a choice that was sort of thinking more long-term, the benefits or the most important things for her and her daughter, rather than having sort of a rush decision about, well, he said this, so I can't do this, right? And I think a lot of us do that. We have those, especially, again, we're in this heightened state of emotion. We have these automatic sort of, no, all right, I'm done. Like, this happened, okay, forget it. All bets are off, right? And if we actually go through with that, long-term can have some really negative effects.
Yeah, that's funny you brought up. Well, not funny, but it's interesting that was your example, because while I currently handle 100% amicable cooperative divorce cases, why I want to have folks like you on to show that there's a better way of doing this. But what you said when I worked for the courts 10 plus years ago, that the spousal punishment by trying to fight for custody, not because they're a bad father or a bad mother, but for the emotional charged reasons of punishing someone, essentially, is something that happens quite a bit, and then causes significant litigation.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. I think we do a lot of things out of spite when we're hurting.
Good word.
And we do it because that person hurt us. That person should have known. That person shouldn't have done X, Y, and Z, right? And so we do want to hurt them. And sometimes the easiest way is to use the kids. And it's heartbreaking, right? It's heartbreaking because these are just children, right? And they love their parents. I mean, hopefully, if it's a good relationship and a healthy parenthood, they love their parents and deserve to have both their parents in their lives. But there's time, there's energy, there's a lot of money, like you're saying, that goes into doing things out of spite.
Yeah. Where do people start with, like, how do people find you? Meaning they find you online, they're referred to you. And my bigger question is, you have your grief counseling, but you also have some coaching packages. I don't know if those are one and the same. You have Evolve empower, and emerge. Can you go into detail where people would, and or is it like they go through this process, they start at evolve and end up at emerge? Can you talk about your coaching programs?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so most people kind of come sort of in the beginning stages. Certainly, some people come a little bit later. They may already be in the middle of or towards the end of the divorce. I do have some clients who are like, I've already gone through the divorce. Now I'm looking at rebuilding my life. I want to figure myself out. I want to eventually start dating again. I want to, feel like a human, feel like myself. And we talk a lot about like, okay, you've changed a lot over the years, and even more so through this process. So who are you now? Right. So I do have some clients who come in sort of at that later stage, but I also do have clients who come in and they're just in the very beginning stages, and it's about, okay, I need to like figure out how to start to separate, how to start to navigate who's going to see the kids when. I do have some clients who like to stay in the same home, right, and then or leave the kids in the home, and then they travel back and forth to the apartment, stuff like that. So it really depends on the person and where they are. I do get a lot of referrals and a lot of like whether it's previous clients or people in my life, and also people through searching online, and wonderful podcasts and shows like this as well also help. And these packages are really meant to sort of be a starting point, but it's never meant to be the only way. Right. I try to customize everything depending on the person, what they need, where they are, and really make it something that's unique to them. So that these are sort of like, nice things I can put on my website, and I do tend to follow them, but they're not the end all be all, the only thing that I offer.
Do these do these coaching programs, are they group coaching? Are they one-on-one, or it depends, or it's optional? How was that like?
It used to be more group, but I have found that most people who are coming to me have already done a lot of group work, and that's why they're coming to me. They don't want to do it anymore, right? They want more personalized, more customized support. The groups, they got less from it. You know what I mean? They got less one-on-one time. They got less time to really go into what they were dealing with. It was like kind of a round robin from what I was told from some certain people. And what they really want is like, I want this for me. I want this whole hour for me. Right. And so I started to kind of phase out the group as much. I'm still open to doing it, but I'm not running groups as much as I am doing one-on-one right now.
So that makes sense, because you're saying how when you went through your grief in the beginning, you were looking for someone that would deal directly with your grief. So the group counseling, was probably beneficial at that stage. But then when people are done with the group training, they come to you for more of the one-on-one to drill down specifically, just like you did when you had your grief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, especially when we're in a lower state emotionally, whether it's the loss of a loved one or the ending of a relationship like divorce, it's hard to hear other people in pain too. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's why sometimes these groups can be really overwhelming. It's because you're already in so much pain, and then you come to a group and you see so many other people in pain. And it's like, it feels too much, right? It's too much to handle. You might be very empathetic or very sensitive. Sometimes it's a comfort because you're not the only one. Oh, look, somebody else is experiencing this too. But I get a lot of people telling me like it just felt like it was too much for them, and so they really do want that one-on-one kind of customized or focused attention, right? They want that attention for themselves, where they don't have to worry about how somebody else is feeling.
Gotcha. Someone that is going through a divorce, where would they start in, like, what does that look like to them in the grieving process? I know there's can be a lot of different things they're going through, but what's one or two things that they can do to kind of get some control over their life, so they're not feeling completely overwhelmed?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I would say the first thing is self-care, which sometimes it goes out the window right away. I talk about the three sort of foundational things. It's like, are you eating well? Are you sleeping well? And are you moving? Are you exercising? And are you doing those consistently? Right? Because if your sleep is off, you're already going to be more stressed. If you're eating poorly and sort of comfort foods all the time, or not eating at all, that's going to have a huge impact on your mood. If you're not moving, if you're not using your body in some way, right? It doesn't have to be super high activity, high impact, right? But some kind of activity is going to really help you stabilize, right? And so having those three as sort of the foundation is really important. If you're already doing that, fantastic. Then it is about like, okay, emotional regulation. Like, are you breathing? Can you do some mindfulness and meditation? Like, I have a lot of different resources for people when they're going through divorce, about how to regulate their emotions, how to respond, not react, right? How to be able to communicate, take a step back, pause when you need to. But really being able to like take care of themselves, even in the moment, doing some very basic physical exercises that can help them kind of stay grounded in the moment when the conversation's getting heated with their previous spouse or former spouse, stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's about like, okay, what can you do to kind of help yourself? And then also, what do you need to do to help your children? Now, I'm definitely not an expert in, child development and child grief, and what they experience. I have some training on it, but really my area of expertise is working with an older person, right, and an adult. And so it is about, okay, where can we get the research? Where can we get the information? Where can we help our children? Like, and how do we help their children in dealing with the turmoil that's going to come up for them, right? So addressing that as well. And then also recognizing that a lot of this is not going to be in your control. As frustrating as that is, most things in life are not in our control. We don't know how it's going to go. And so it is about, how do I stay grounded and find stability in myself amidst all the chaos, right? How do I deal with the anxiety of the unknown while I'm in the middle of this process, right? And that in and of itself can take a long time to reconcile, right? It's not an easy process to be like, I don't get to control this. I don't get to make all the decisions. I don't get to say how this is going to run. And if anybody's a controller like I am and wants to have control over everything, wants to know everything right away, it's really hard. It's really frustrating to be able to have to say, I don't get to control. I don't know how this is going to go.
Yeah, it makes sense. Earlier, you had made a comment about when people are going through a divorce that they kind of lose their friends, their identity, and they don't really get the support they thought they would get from family. Do you think that this is because people who are watching them go through that grief kind of back away because they don't know what to say to them? Or
I think, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of different things. So very often people don't know what to say. They don't know whether they should bring it up. They don't know whether they should avoid it. They don't know how to treat you. They don't know if what's going to, trigger you. But there's also a lot of, like, I've talked to a lot of people who, like, my family doesn't want this. They don't want me to get a divorce. They don't agree. That they think I'm making a foolish decision, or they think I'm making a rash decision. They're not in it, so they don't know what I've been dealing with, right? But they don't agree, right? And certainly in some cultures, the divorce is very much an anathema. Like, you can't get divorced. No, stay. Right. Even if you're unhappy, stay. You need that for sort of the cultural appearance. And so it really depends on the person. But yes, I think a lot of people don't know how to treat us when we're grieving, and sometimes you may not be, like, you'll be grieving, but you'll appear to be fine, right? Or you actually feel a sense of relief. And so people don't know how to handle that, because it's like, you're breaking up your home and you feel relieved. Should you feel that way? What's up with that? Was it abusive? How bad was it? Right. And so I think there's also a bit of judgment and a lack of understanding, or a lack of empathy or compassion, maybe, on people's parts. And so they don't always they don't fully understand or know what to do, and how to handle the situation. And hopefully people have someone in their life, that's going to be non-judgmental and supportive. But I always tell people, worst comes to worst, I'm that person, right? I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to tell you what to do. This is your safe space. But I do try to encourage people, find somebody in your life to be that, help them understand. I talk to my clients a lot about how to train the people in our lives on how we want to be treated and what would be supportive for us, especially now. And if you don't fully have a clear understanding of that, it has to evolve, but at least you get to communicate, today, this is what feels good. Today, this is what I need. And maybe tomorrow that'll be different, and that's okay.
So let's say there is someone that is compassionate and non-judgmental to the issue or the particular grief. How would you know what to say? Can you give examples of what someone going through just a grief in general, wants to hear? Like
I
maybe
think.
they're uncomfortable, like bringing it up, or should
Mhm,
they bring it up?
mhm. I think one of the most important things, and I say this to people a lot for all kinds of grief, is to be honest, to be radically honest, and say, I have no idea what to say. I'm so afraid of stepping on your toes or saying the wrong thing. I want to be a safe space for you. I want to support you, and I'm going to need your help. So if I say something wrong, please tell me. I'm going to do my best to understand, but just know that I'm here with you. I'm going to walk through this with you, and you've got me, right? You've got me for whatever I can do. That when's the last time you've heard anything close to that, right?
Never.
Yeah, I mean, like, we're so afraid to say the wrong thing. We should just say we're afraid to say the wrong thing. We should just be honest about, like, I don't know how to handle this. I don't know if you know how you want me to handle this, but I'm open to any suggestions. I'm going to try my best. I want the feedback, but most importantly, I want you to know that I'm here for you. That I'm going to try and be a safe person for you, because again, most people are busy judging us. They're busy judging our actions. They're busy judging if we're dating again, if we're not dating again, if we're on social media about this, if we're not on social media about, like, they have all kinds of ideas about how we should be handling what we're dealing with, and how should we go through what we're dealing with. And I think it's really important for us to be able to say, I'm that person that's not going to tell you how to do it. I'm just going to walk with you as you're doing it.
Are there people? I mean, the people coming to you are actually looking for help, but are there people that are going through grief that don't want help? They don't want to talk about it. They just kind of shut down.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. I think, we as a society are not trained to deal with loss. We're not taught from an early age how to deal with, these hard emotions. It's usually about finding another person, right? There's plenty of fish. You'll find somebody else. Don't worry, right? So replace the loss, or use certain things to deal with the loss. Whether it's use your work and just stay busy and just stay focused on something else, so avoid it that way, or use social media, use TV, use entertainment, do whatever you can, distract yourself, right? So we kind of have these coping mechanisms that are pretty unhealthy, frankly. And so we have to learn how to be okay with just being in this difficult situation. But a lot of people, it's really hard. It's really hard to deal with these difficult emotions and difficult situations if we haven't been taught. We have no experience, right? And so I think that's the point where you have to recognize, you get to a certain point where it's like, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep trying to push this away. I can't keep trying to ignore this, and hopefully most people will get there sooner rather than later. But some people, unfortunately, they may never get there. They may never, their whole lives might fall apart as a result of trying to avoid the difficult or the grief that they're feeling. And I think I think it's important to note that every grief that we experience, and every person that experiences grief, is different, right? It's very unique. So I went through a loss recently that was very different than the loss I experienced with my sister. It was very different than the other losses that I've had. And so each experience is going to be different. So if you're going through a divorce right now, you can't expect your grief to be similar to any other experience of grief that you've had. And so I think it's important to recognize you might be able to deal with this differently. You might have some more tools in your tool belt than you did prior. You might have learned some difficult lessons along the way that you can bring into this experience. And so I talk to a lot of people about how to be resilient, how to understand and kind of look at themselves holistically, to recognize what they can and cannot do, or what they have already been through, and how that's shaped their experience. But they're also on their own timeline. So some people might not be ready right now, but in 6 months they'll be ready to talk about it. And I think it's important to try not to force it either. As long as you're healthy and you're maintaining everything as best as you can, it may not be the time for you to seek support. If you're really struggling, of course, get support. But if you feel like you can handle it and you have a strong resistance to talking to anybody right now, that might be worth, if not honoring, at least exploring what that resistance is, and if you're actually ready, but avoiding it, or if you're just not ready.
I usually wrap up by asking what else should we talk about, any final words, but I want to say that what you just kind of went over pretty much tackled that.
Excellent. I'm
Well,
glad.
thank you so much for coming on. I want to respect your time. We're just hitting around the 30-minute mark. I think we covered a lot of good information that will be helpful to clients of mine who are considering going through divorce. Reach out to Nesreen if I guess at any stage they, can begin that journey with you. They don't have to wait till they feel the loss or the grief of divorce. They could get into your coaching program and get in touch with you just to find out what they have coming up to be dealing with. And
Absolutely.
again, the goal here is again to get in front of those clients and our potential clients, but maybe then they don't end up having to go through a contested divorce because they're able to handle their emotions better and make better decisions, and then maybe go through an amicable divorce. Nesreen, thank you again so much. HarborLightCoaching.com, a lot of great coaching and information. You're on several podcasts, so definitely if people will go there, it'd be very beneficial for them. Thanks again, Nesreen.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.